And so I'm going to work through this list of concepts. We're going to talk about self-service access to on-premise clusters, a live demonstration of that user workspace, where you have like your own personalized workspace. Then we'll run a couple workflows, including the interactive sessions or these graphical connections to clusters. So like things like Jupyter Lab or remote desktops, as well as a couple quote unquote classical number crunching jobs. And then we can talk a little bit about the cloud resources and how the cloud resources are brought into the user experience. And that's all very much, that left side, that left column is very much like the user experience, or like, you know, the researcher experience, if you will. And then I wanted to break it up into two parts where the second part of the demo, we'll talk a little bit about the management or the organizational experience for what are some of the best practices that we've developed for managing large teams of high-performance computing users. Things like how we implement zero trust practices, how we can control costs, and then in particular, and then as well, some details on environment as code, as we discussed earlier, and creating custom workflows. So with that, I'm going to exit the slides and jump into a browser tab. Is this, Shailesh, is this visible to you?
Yes. Yes.
Perfect. Great. Thank you very much. And feel free, you know, Shailesh, if there's anything in particular that you want to interject about, feel free to jump in.
Absolutely, we'll do that.
I wanted to note for everyone here that I changed the branding on our platform. So the URL that I've gone to is activate.parallel.works. This is our general commercial version of the platform. I'm not running this demonstration on the Albert Einstein College of Medicine resources, partly because I don't want to accidentally show any private information, right? So that's why I'm running the demo in the commercial side on an account that I created especially for this workshop. But what I can do is I can change the branding, right, to make it kind of look like what the user experience would be like. And that's a fun customization feature that we've recently added. But really what I want to guide everyone to at first is this idea of self-service connecting to a cluster. There's a lot happening here, a lot of buttons and things. And really what I want to focus on is this cluster here with the on-off button called on-prem. This is how we connect to an on-premise environment. So by pressing this on-off button, a pop-up will appear, and it'll go through the process of making an SSH connection to another cluster. And this is nearly the same as what would happen at Einstein. It's a little bit different for various technical reasons. But the key thing here is that we scrolled through the connection, a variety of different things happened. Users can see how their credentials are being used. And if there are things like multi-factor authentication, like multiple steps that need to be made to authenticate to get to the cluster, it's possible to include them here. But I didn't include that as part of the demo just to make things smooth. But if an MFA prompt is needed, this process can pause, wait for that prompt, and then continue later. So with that, the cluster is on, a nice friendly green dot. And I have my username on that cluster and an IP address. In the background, I just want to show briefly how this is configured. I can adjust things like what my username would be, what the IP address would be, and then here I'm just using SSH keys. However, I want to note that with certain clusters, more sophisticated authentication mechanisms may be necessary. So things like proxy certificates that are going through single sign-on and so on. And that is entirely possible. So I'll go back to the list. So I've connected to a cluster. How do I use it, right? So a lot of folks may be familiar with going on the command line. And so we provide a very easy way to get right to the command line on a cluster by clicking on your username for this cluster. And a terminal pops up from the bottom. There we go. And I can ask who am I on this cluster, which SF Gary, which matches my username in the configuration as well as what's there. I can run various other commands like sinfo to indeed show that this is a Slurm cluster, and there's a variety of nodes and partitions that I can use on this cluster if I need to. However, this can be a bit, we want to provide for easier user access, right? So moving beyond just moving beyond the command line, right? And so when I popped up this terminal, there was actually two things that happened. Where is it? Here we go. There's also this other prompt that I have. This is my Parallelworks user container. And so here I may have a different username. In this case, it's pwdemo.stefan. And I have in my personal workspace, I have some clusters, some jobs, some storage, and some workflows, right? Again, this is very abstract, but this is the command line access to my personal working space. If I want to get one step further down the line in terms of a graphical view of that personal workspace, I can go to our editor tab, which will start a full-on integrated development environment inside that personalized workspace. So I'll make this bottom terminal go away and open up the editor. And so in the editor, here, I'll just close this terminal. This editor has the same clusters, jobs, storage, and workflows that I was able to see on the command line. But now I can browse them interactively or visually, and I can see like maybe results of jobs that I've run in the past. And I can also, if I want to, I can open up I can open files and view them. So for example, here's an example file that I can just open up and I can start editing inside my tree of files. So it provides for a very nice, quick way to browse the files that are available in my personal workspace. But there's also a bonus, is that it's not just the files in my workspace. This clusters folder allows me to mount the home directory, or actually other directories, from any cluster that I have connected to my account. So when I display this, I'll make these smaller just so that it lists. Right now I have two clusters connected to my account. There's the on-premise cluster that I connected to just at the early part of this demo. And that's listed here with on-prem/home. I also happen to have a cloud cluster that's up and running, and we'll talk about that cloud cluster in just a minute. That's also connected to this account, and its files are available to me through this interface. So I can open up and see I've got a variety of files on my cloud cluster, and I can open up again and I can see I've got a variety of files on my on-premise cluster. And you can actually drag and drop between these two. So if you open up a Jupyter Notebook in one, you want to move it to the other, move files back and forth, it's possible. Although it's not going to be as high performant as some other data systems. So really, this is good for small files, for dragging and dropping between these two things. Okay. So that's kind of an important, really what I wanted to discuss in terms of, and try to provide a kind of a real world example of what I mean by a personalized user workspace, right? This is a place where I have all my files in Activate, and not only is it just the files I have on Activate, but it's also the files I have on my clusters. Okay. So so basically up till now, we've really just talked about access, right? Connect to a cluster, look at its files. So let's talk a little bit about workflows. So I'll go back to my home page, and workflows are really about taking things to scale through automation, right? A workflow is just a series of automated steps. And those steps can be the automated steps to run a large simulation like pre-processing, simulation, post-processing. Those steps can also be the steps necessary to start a graphical connection to a cluster. So for example, I have my on-prem cluster is running here, and I'm going to connect a Jupyter Lab. I want to start Jupyter Lab on it. So I'm going to go to my workflows pane and select a workflow, and it comes up with the workflow launch page. And basically behind this page is the list of automated steps that is necessary to start Jupyter Lab on a cluster. And I can show you, a little bit deeper how those steps are programmed and managed. But for most users, they don't want to see that. They just want Jupyter Lab on the head node of the cluster. And so that's what we can do. I just have to select between whatever clusters I have running. So I'll pick on-prem. I can choose between launching a job on the controller node or the head node or on one of the partitions. But for speed, I'm going to use the controller. And then all I have to do, I mean, there's additional settings that are hidden below for Jupyter and various customizations. But I'll skip that for now. And really all I have to do is hit execute. And then this workflow is going to go through the steps necessary to start up Jupyter Lab on my on-premise cluster. And while we wait, we provide a handy workflow progress viewer. So I'll click on this link, which will take me to what we call a noodle diagram of the various steps that are happening as the Jupyter Lab instance is starting on the head node of this cluster. So there's we break it up into kind of main jobs, and then within each job there's multiple steps. And at each point you can grab the logs for each step to inspect what's going on and check your progress. And you can also visualize in real time how this is how the process is moving through here. Okay. For folks who are watching very closely, you'll notice there's some Kubernetes jobs that are listed here. And that's because this workflow can run on either a Kubernetes cluster or on a Slurm cluster, and just has to be selected by the user. All right, so let's go to the home page to see, this is the main dashboard. And so how do we connect to this running Jupyter Lab instance? So if I scroll down a little bit, you'll see that I have a list of sessions that are running. And I'm going to decrease my screen zoom just a little bit so we can see the whole there. So I have 2 sessions already running on the cloud cluster. It's called GCE. It happens to be a Google cluster, but we also provide access to AWS and Azure clusters. So that I know where these sessions are running. And then this last session here is the Jupyter Lab session I just launched for my on-premise cluster. And I can tell because it's got that little on-prem tag here. And if I click on the link, here I am. Jupyter is going to appear for me. And I can start working right away. So I can click on a notebook and start writing some code. For example, where am I here? And maybe a little bit of Python code. There we go. And this is all very wonderful, except that, in the real world, we'd be running machine learning or something far more interesting. But I can save this notebook as, say, demo.ipymb. It appears in my Jupyter file browser. But if I want to, I can go and view that on my workspace file browser, right? So say I want to transfer it from this on-premise cluster to a cloud cluster. And so here, if I go to editor, which is, again, the browser for my whole workspace. And I'll do a little bit of cleanup here. On my on-premise cluster, I can see the demo.ipy notebook. And I can literally just drag and drop it into my Google Cloud cluster. And it appears on the Google Cloud cluster. And if I go to home and now connect to a different Jupyter session, I'll see that notebook ready for use. All right, it must be buried inside one of those files. Which one did I put it in? Okay, well, I've lost track of it, but it's somewhere in there. And in the interest of time, I'm going to move on. But it would, if I must have dragged it into the wrong directory, and then but the same notebook would pop up, right? I guess one of the key things that I wanted to, so this is very much what the user experience is like, right? And one of Shailesh's questions earlier was, if your files are bigger and you need to use, like, how do you do like big data transfer? That's really what I want to get to, because that is also a really nice demonstration of how we apply zero trust in organizational policies. So on the platform, we also have a whole section associated with storage. And there's many storage options here. I'm not going to go through all of them, but basically you can view them as a spectrum of slow but less expensive storage toward very fast but very, very expensive storage. And buckets are nice because they're slow, but they're not very expensive. And I've already configured a bucket. ParallelWorks allows you to add storage and configure storage just like you would add a cloud cluster to your account. And you can turn it on or off. So if I wanted to destroy my bucket, I could. It gives you control over where your data is. But the key point is that this bucket provides, I'll go back to the home page so that you can also see that there's like a buckets tab where you can kind of see a dashboard of where your buckets are. The beautiful thing is that there's a couple different ways to access this bucket. And one of these ways are short-term access credentials. So with one click, you can get the information that you need to copy and paste to pretty much any computer what is basically the passcode necessary to access this bucket. And you could take it to your laptop, you could take it to another cluster, and we also provide examples for how to use those credentials to access the contents in that bucket. But the beautiful thing is that this username, effectively username and password, is limited to just the bucket, and it's only valid for 12 hours. So this is the important concept when it comes to zero trust, because it's about creating credentials that are only valid for a short period of time to do very specific things.
It's a really powerful point, Stefan. I want to emphasize that we're always keeping an eye on being able to protect our assets, and knowing that there's a focus here on what can we do to keep these these type of buckets, for example, very helpful because they give us that place that we can access data from anywhere, but also that introduces a new risk, right? That's a new potential attack surface.
Mm-hmm.
So anything that we can do to help insulate us from that attack, using methods like you described right here, that's so important.
Absolutely. And there's some organizational controls that we have in place as well. So for example, we can allow organizations can create users. Here's a list of sample users for this organization. But users are organized into groups, and groups, this is very important, have different levels of permission, right? So you can choose which groups have access to which keys, which groups have access to which resources. And also you can set the allocation. So this particular group can use up to $100 of computing. And so we set the allocations and cost controls based on the groups. And as well, from an organizational perspective, organizations will enter their cloud key one time. It gets stored in a vault. And then every operation, whether it's creating a bucket, creating a cloud cluster, or whatever, the short-term credentials are issued from that one source key in the vault.
Yep.
And so that way we always retain short-term credentials, and we never give users general access to the cloud console, which can be very confusing for a lot of users.
Yeah, it's true. Well, this plus the cost controls I found very interesting as well for people to see.
Absolutely, yeah. We have a cost control dashboard. So this is the group. This is the dashboard that for this particular compute group. You can see we haven't spent very much in our demo today.
Yeah.
But and it's taking a little bit of a while to render because it's very generalized, right? And I've not used it for a long period of time, but you can see spend over time, where, like, for groups that have much more usage, right? You'll see, like, spend over time. Are you hitting a threshold? And compute resources, depending on organizational policies, can be shut down or paused based on how close you are to particular thresholds. So maybe at 80% you get a warning, 90% there's a pause, at 99% things get destroyed, right? So, but organizations can set that level.